Welcome to another audio podcast from the Caribbean Hawk. Before proceeding, I humbly ask for your support. If you appreciate my analysis and commentary, please like and subscribe. Our topic today, Venezuela is not Grenada. Fears are growing in the Eastern Caribbean that their nations are slowly, but surely being dragged into America's regime change war versus Venezuela. Earlier this week, there was an uproar in Trinidad and Tobago when a U.S. C-17 military aircraft landed at the main international airport. According to the local daily Newsday, quote, the arrival on October 9 of a United States Air Force C-17 aircraft at Payarco International Airport set many tongues wagging with social media posts claiming the U.S. military was arriving en masse into Trinidad as part of the ongoing American military action in the Caribbean Sea against Venezuelan narco-terrorists. The rumors and fears were mostly allayed when officials of the American Embassy in Port of Spain explained that the aircraft had arrived to collect and repatriate the body of an embassy official who had died earlier this month. Despite all the attempts to soothe the anxieties of the Trinidadians, the incident proved that the population is quite aware that their country is now an integral part of America's warmongering versus Venezuela. The tone was set since early when September Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar okayed the American Navy blowing up Venezuelan boats and the wanton killing of their occupants based solely on U.S. allegations they were narco-traffickers. She doubled down on her position at the United Nations by rejecting the long-held regional policy of the Caribbean as a zone of peace. See my previous Substack post for more. Further evidence of Trinidad's key role in the American plans was provided on the very day of the rumors of military aircraft landing at Payarco. According to a report in the Latin America Times, the United States moved several military helicopters off the coast of Trinidad and Tobago, just a few miles from Venezuela. Venezuelan outlet El Nacional noted that at least 4 Special Ops helicopters and 3 Black Hawks have been spotted. It added that they could be aboard the Ocean Trader, a converted cargo vessel designed to serve as a special operations mothership. As if to substantiate the threat of U.S. Special Ops, the Venezuelan Minister of Defense Vladimir Padrino Lopez had warned 1 day earlier that the U.S. might send special forces to his country to carry out targeted assassinations, as well as sabotages to strategic assets. He did not say that TNT was key to those plans, but President Maduro in early September already said, quote, the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago went crazy. She went crazy because she was threatening that she was going to authorize attacks from Trinidad and Tobago against Venezuela. That is like declaring war against Venezuela. Grenada is up next. To confirm that the U.S. wants to drag more islands into the conflict, also on October 9th, there was a report in the Trinidad and Tobago Guardian that the U.S. has requested the government to permit military equipment and personnel at their main international airport. The Guardian quoted directly from a Grenadian government press release. Quote, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Export Development has confirmed receiving a request from the United States government to temporarily install radar equipment and deploy technical personnel at Morris Bishop International Airport. The request is being assessed by the Ministries of National Security, Legal Affairs and Foreign Affairs in technical consultations, in coordination with the Grenada Airports Authority and other relevant agencies. Officials assured citizens that any decision will be guided by Grenada's sovereignty, public safety, and national interest, including the protection of the tourism industry, the traveling public, and the country's economic well-being. This attempt by the U.S. to drag Grenada into the conflict is the ultimate irony. After using sheer brute force, rather than diplomacy, in 1983, to successfully invade Grenada based partly on the false allegation that there was a Cuban military base at the future airport. 40 years later, they seek to use the very airport the Cubans built to stage military aggression against neighboring Venezuela. The referenced Guardian newspaper had a long piece explaining that pulling Grenada into the conflict could have dangerous consequences for the region. Dr. Garvin Hira, who they described as a regional security expert, said that while Grenada has the sovereign right to make its own security decisions, Caribbean stability depends on neutrality, cooperation, and transparency. He warned that if reports of U.S. radar installation were accurate, they could test CARICOM's unity and alter the region's security balance. Military risk to the Caribbean. Most Caribbean newspapers and websites analyzing the potential risks of Caribbean involvement in war versus Venezuela avoid discussing the potential casualties and collateral damage. Let us not forget that 300 Caribbean troops from 6 nations, Barbados, Jamaica, Dominica, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Antigua and Barbuda, allied with 7,000 Americans to invade Grenada. Below is a summary of the lives lost during the invasion. U.S. casualties. Killed, estimated 19 U.S. servicemen killed in action. Wounded, approximately 116 U.S. servicemen were wounded. Non-hostile deaths. There was at least one non-hostile death among U.S. forces. Cuban casualties. Killed, 24 to 25 Cuban personnel were killed. Wounded, approximately 59 Cubans were wounded. Grenadian casualties. Killed. Up to 45 members of the Grenadian military were killed. Civilians killed. At least 24 civilians were killed, with 18 of these deaths resulting from an accidental bombing of a mental hospital. Civilians wounded. Approximately 337 to 358 civilians were wounded. So, in total, no less than 114 were killed, including 24 civilians and 523, mostly civilians, wounded. The Caribbean troops suffered no casualties, which is apparently due to them being deployed in non-combat roles. Bottom line, Grenada was a walkover for the American invaders. A relatively small Caribbean island of 133 square miles, with a 100,000 population, and armed forces totaling 1,300, was defeated within a month by the largest country in the hemisphere, with the biggest economy, as well as the largest and most advanced military. In contrast, Venezuela has a significantly larger army than Grenada had in 1983. Their armed forces comprise approximately 120,000 active personnel, 100,000 reservists, and more than 220,000 paramilitary forces, mainly in the National Guard. Separate from the armed forces are the Bolivarian militia, with up to 4.5 million members having been mobilized since early September, according to the government. On the American side, latest reports by the New York Times are that the U.S. has increased the number of troops that could potentially invade Venezuela to 10,000, most of whom are based in Puerto Rico. Obviously, the Americans have significantly more troops in reserve, based on total number of active-duty military personnel, of approximately 1.32 million. But mobilizing and stationing more troops to attack Venezuela is another matter. The Venezuelan army may be no match in size, as well as in the volume and quality of armaments available to the Americans. But as many failed U.S. wars have proven, from Vietnam to Afghanistan, it is not the size of the invading army that is decisive. As observed repeatedly, it is the will to fight by the defenders of their homeland that caused the defeat of the Americans. Back to the numbers. Based on the New York Times, we are speaking of 10,000 Americans versus 440,000 Venezuelan troops. That is a ratio of 1 American to 44 Venezuelans. Contrast this with Grenada when the ratio was 7 Americans versus 1 Grenadian. If America lost 19 soldiers in Grenada after 1 month of fighting, one can easily project that the losses in Venezuela would be orders of magnitude greater if they invade with only 10,000 soldiers. This back-of-the-envelope calculations is why this writer, and many other more qualified experts, are doubtful that America would invade with only 10,000 troops. The losses would be colossal and unacceptable to the casualty-shy American public. Final thoughts. The logic of war suggests that if America wants to successfully invade Venezuela, they would need to station thousands more troops closer to the Bolivarian Republic. Their options are limited to outrightly pro-American nations, such as Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana. The latter may be next door to Venezuela, but they are separated by thousands of square miles of Amazon forests, making them an unviable springboard. No wonder there are rumors that the Americans want to base troops in TNT if America moves its troops. Now in Puerto Rico, 800 miles closer to the shores of Venezuela, by housing them in Trinidad and Tobago or even Grenada. These nations would become active co-belligerents in the war. The consequences are incalculable. One thing is certain: the casualties and collateral damage would make Grenada 1983 look like a walk in a beautiful, manicured park. You have got to wonder how Caribbean countries benefit from this regime change operation dressed up as a war against narco-traffickers. The ultimate payoff for the U.S., should they overthrow Maduro, is ownership and control of Venezuela's natural resources. As Trump blurted out when he sent the U.S. military to occupy the Syrian oilfields during his first term, it was all about the oil. Why is it any different this time around? Thanks for listening, and share this audio with a friend. For more content like this, check out Caribbean Hawk on Substack. Until another podcast, one love, one heart.